You'll forgive me if I drink my morning coffee while doing this. It's a Sunday. Didn't have quite as much time as I'd liked. And because it's a Sunday, we tend to do a little less of the organized prep before a live stream because it's Sunday. But the news doesn't stop. So yesterday, Francis went on to 60 Minutes, an American news show that literally nobody, like half the population, for ideological reasons, won't watch because the show's very, very biased. It had been more popular in my youth with people from across the political spectrum, but it has played its hand now and is completely biased towards one side of things. And he went on there to excoriate the people he calls conservatives, and Vigano responded to it. And he agreed with him. But here's the difference. Francis was using the term conservative in just the broadest sense possible, very much an American kind of way, but also in a church way. And here, Vigano is using it in the church sense, in the post-conciliar sense. Some people don't like having Catholics divided into categories. I always try to differentiate traditional Catholics and traditionally minded Catholics. These are people who go to the ordinary form for whatever reason, but have the faith, have the traditional understanding of things, versus those who defend the post-conciliar order and do it from a sort of we just need to properly implement Vatican II kind of way, the post-conciliar conservatism. And that's what he's talking about there. And it will ruffle some feathers, his response, but as you'll see, it's a challenge to people to, if that's where you find yourself and decide being challenged by him, to dig deeper, maybe read some old books and see really where it was before Vatican II and after where things deviated. Because the hermeneutic of continuity has always been this concept that traditionalists have always kind of chuckled at because there are too many contradictions between the pre-conciliar faith and the post-conciliar faith to really be something to take seriously. But you have to have a hermeneutic of continuity to have the changes made validated. But the contradictions are so stark that you can't have a hermeneutic of continuity. And it's why we've been in such a mess for so long. And Vigano's response is a challenge to that. Before we get there, though, I want to show you something interesting that happened last night. Share it on Twitter. I won't play any of the audio that goes with it because it's got some copyrighted music. But we get this. They say, Meteor spotted in the skies over Spain and Portugal. Early reports claim that the blue flash could be seen darting through the night sky for hundreds of kilometers. At the moment, it has not been confirmed if it hit the Earth's surface. However, some reports say it may have fallen near the town of Castro Daire. Other reports say it was closer to Pinheiro. All right, so I looked to see where this town is, Castro Daire. I'm hoping I'm saying it right, but it's about 2 hours from Fatima, so, it's a 2-hour drive. I'm not sure how many kilometers that is, but it's a 2-hour drive by... But you'll see here some of this rather remarkable footage. And these are meteors. These are not fireworks. This is not, their Portuguese Air Force doing weird things. And these are people at, a secular concert of some kind, doing their thing, seeing this stuff. Good morning to those in the chat. Yes, Marie, the 60 Minutes used to be a decent show. I remember watching it when I was a kid, finding it interesting. But yeah, so you had that happening. Now, we had also, this is interesting from, we'll go with Novus Ordo Watches coverage of this. Francis has doubled down on one of his heresies. Bergoglio doubles down. All religions look at the one God in different ways. Really? Remember, Francis had said that he has rejected the idea of organized efforts to bring people to the faith, to bring them to the church. There have been times where people have had audiences with him where missionaries have shown him converts from their efforts, and he chastised the missionaries for doing it. It was really remarkable stuff. Part of the story is that he was talking about prison ministry, and he has talked about here, as this article says, when Bergoglio visits prisons, he often points out that God forgives always, although he never mentions the conditions necessary to receive forgiveness. And it was no time different this time around. Sometimes, in fact, he denies outright that there are any such conditions aside from simply asking to be forgiven. Now, When you go to confession, you're supposed to name the kind of sin and the number of times it happened and your place in your station in life and any circumstances around it. You should at least ballpark the number if it's something of a sin of a habit of some kind. If you have if you like, I don't know, yelling invectives at, the elderly or something as a sin. Yeah, that's a sin. You don't know how many times you do it. Try to at least ballpark it, right? But those are sort of the conditions for a valid confession. And Francis kind of tosses that out the window. Big story this past Saturday from the article, however, was something else, namely what Francis told prisoners about God and the world's religions. The Vatican has not yet released any official English translation of the papal pretender's address to inmates. Pause here. Novus Ordo Watch is a Sedevacantist website, and you will see that language. You would see that language sprinkled throughout. Not a Sedevacantist. They do great reporting, though. So we will use a computer translation via DeepL, duly checked against the live translation provided by the Vatican reporter in the video of the event. Here, then, is what Francis said. Quote, "And as the prison director said, God is one. Our cultures have taught us to call him by one name or another, and to find him in different ways, but he is the same Father to all of us. He is one, and all religions, all cultures look at the one God in different ways." And as the article calls it, that is apostate indifferentism. It comes from the stonecutters. It is a heresy, what he just said. That's unequivocally a heresy. And that's where we are. Thank you for the super chat, Deborah. Is appreciated. Love that he brings contests almost every day. God bless you and the family from KC, Missouri. Thank you very much. It is appreciated, Deborah. So now let's go on to the story of the day that will make some people probably a little uncomfortable here. We'll start with Pope Francis before we get to Vigano's response. Headline from LifeSite. This is from 60 Minutes. Pope Francis says conservative bishops have self-destructive attitude during 60 Minutes interview. That word that I've highlighted on the screen, you say it on YouTube, your channel gets instantly suppressed and you might lose your channel. It's just the way it is. I don't have any control over it. You'll see channels that don't dance around their language as much as I do, never saying that word. They'll find other ways to do it. There's there's other things that they do, other words that get you that same treatment, but that word is absolutely one of them. Certain of the U.S. episcopate have been notable in defending elements of Catholic teaching, often in seeming juxtaposition to Francis's own stance, including such men as Bishop Joseph Strickland and Cardinal Raymond Burke. Again, so if you join me late watching this live, Francis uses the term conservative in the broadest sense possible, both the conservative and the ecclesiastical, or the political and the ecclesiastical sense. Vigano responds, agreeing with Francis, but in the ecclesiastical sense, because he's challenging people who have a conservative attitude about the post-conciliar era, meaning that the Vatican II was just implemented incorrectly and that kind of stuff, to dig deeper and accept a more traditional understanding. And this is why I use terms like traditionally minded and traditional Catholics, because there are Catholics who would go to a traditional liturgy if they had one anywhere near them, and they just don't have one and don't have the ability to drive for 2 hours to get to one. So it's understandable. It's why I tend to include traditionally minded Catholics in my broader traditional Catholic thing. And I'm going to say that Vigano is doing the same thing here. He's just being his usual kind of acerbic way of doing things, because that's just his style. Here's the article. Pope Francis has described conservative bishops as having a self-destructive attitude due to being close inside a dogmatic box. A conservative is one who clings to something and does not want to see beyond that, Francis said in response to a question about conservative bishops in the United States. The CBS 60 Minutes interview described as opposing Francis's, quote, efforts to revisit teachings and traditions. It is a self-destructive attitude because one thing is to take capital T tradition into account and to consider situations from the past, but quite another is to be closed up inside a dogmatic box, continued Francis. His comments were part of an hour-long interview with CBS's Norah O'Donnell. Conducted in late April, a small segment of the interview was released at the time, with a full hour to be aired on CBS this Sunday and Monday. In a previous clip from the interview, Francis denigrated critics of the thermometer problem argument as foolish. There are people who are foolish, and foolish even if you show them research. They don't believe it, Francis declared. Why? Because they don't understand the situation. or because of their interest, but the thermometer problem exists. And then they quote here Vigano, which we'll get to his full letter in a second. But there you see a conflation of the politics and the ecclesial politics, essentially, in Francis's statement there. Publicly digging at bishops like that is one of those things that when this papacy is finally over, hopefully the next pope will refrain from. But as I'll talk to you about tomorrow, someone who had been really considered very populare, meaning likely to be chosen by moderates and Bergoglians to be the next pope, until they'd had some management problems and some of the things they were running, then their popularity tumbled greatly. In the last year, that person has been essentially rehabilitated, and Francis has chosen them for a very high-profile thing that will be U.S.-centric this year, in a very what looks like obvious effort to elevate this person. And if that person gets it, you'll probably get as much biting snark as you get from Francis, but you will still see the same policies, the same errors, and all the same people there. It just will be with a easier to accept smile. That's if that person gets in. Who knows how the next conclave is go? Only God knows how that conclave will go. But yes, again, we go down to Vigano's letter, and again, I remind you that when he's talking about here as conservatives, he's talking about those who are attached to the post-conciliar forms of things, the so-called reforms of Vatican II, without who are definitely not in the traditional camp, or even like the traditionally minded Catholics who go to the ordinary form. This is not just a liturgical thing. This is also a church teachings thing, a devotions subject, all sorts of things. Because here, it looks like Vigano is agreeing with Francis, except Vigano's not attacking Cardinal Burke and Strickland here either. Because, in fact, he goes in this letter and talks about, briefly mentions his love for John Paul II and Benedict XVI. So this is not a broad-brushed thing. This is him challenging some of those in the more post-conciliar Vatican II was fine, just badly implemented camp to really re-examine that stance and go more and deeper into the issues, because our problems aren't. Francis is the logical outcome of the post-conciliar era. Somebody like that was inevitable with the way things have been going for the last several decades. But here's Vigano. Archbishop Vigano. Pope Francis is right that conservatism, quote, is a self-destructive attitude. It is the attitude of those who criticize the excesses of the synodical church, but are careful not to question the causes, which are to be found in Vatican II. And again, because I maintain this is not an implementation issue, because the same people who implemented the documents of Vatican II are the same people who were there at the council voting on and passing them and helping to write them. So, Vigano, you have heard it said, a conservative is someone who clings to something and does not want to see beyond it. It is a self-destructive attitude to lock oneself in a dogmatic box. For once, Bergoglio is absolutely right. Conservatism wants to preserve the outward appearances of tradition without the doctrinal substance that makes it alive. Conservatism is the attitude of those who criticize the excesses of the synodical church, but are careful not to question the causes, which are to be found in Vatican II. Pause here. Are there any YouTube commentators, Catholic commentators, maybe apologists that come to mind for this stuff? I will just call out one. That's what I've been starting to call Bergoglian answers. That's Catholic answers, because they are like the Pope splainers in chief. They do ballet dancing level of a dance to justify the things that he does, even though it's not justifiable. Let me know if you have any ideas on who fits that bill. Conservatism is really self-destructive behavior because it creates an artificial dogmatic box made of Novus Ordo ad Orientem with Roman chasubles and Gregorian chants, and also of Vetus Ordo, made of selected quotations of some conciliar documents, accidentally not contrasting with the Catholic magisterium of all time, made of the apotheosis of John Paul II and the regret of Benedict XVI, whom we all loved. There it is, his statement saying about loving those two figures. But tradition is not conservatism. Tradition is not a dogmatic box because it draws from the limpid and pure water of the divine source, drawing from grace and fidelity to the gospel and the depositum fide, the lifeblood that makes it capable of looking to the future without denying the past. Tradition develops like an athlete who goes from childhood to adolescence and adulthood, always remaining the same and developing his body harmoniously so that he can face new challenges and overcome them. Semper idem, always the same. Very short statement from Vigano on this. A fairly high profile priest associated with the anti-Moloch movement who does very good work in that stuff, who hates me and Taylor Marshall and Michael Matt and others, and takes to social media to excoriate us, had made this absurd claim that Vigano had gone silent. I wasn't really going to show you this, but for those of you who want to, who actually like Archbishop Vigano still, on screen right there is the most recent episode, or was a recent episode from the world over with Archbishop Vigano. You can go see it. He hasn't gone silent. He's been around for a while. Marie says, wrong. Tradition seeks to revive the doctrine first, and the outward will follow. He has the cart before the horse. No wonder it's not working. I mean, sort of. It's tradition is in this position of having to revive the doctrine. But remember, among traditionalists, the doctrine has been held. The problem is that traditionalists operate in a non-traditional environment, and so we have to revive the doctrine. He's talking about this on an individual level. You have to have the doctrine inside first and practice the doctrine. So I don't think he's got the cart before the horse. I think it's just in the restore the faith, restore the church sort of sense that you might be thinking of there. Marine says, we love Archbishop Vigano. Yes, it's I find it odd that there are people who are going after him the way they are, especially there have been a lot of rumors about him, and until he confirms them himself, I would take no rumor about him with any seriousness, even if you have sources within like the Vatican telling you this, because the Vatican, there's the same Vatican that has been going after him, that he is hiding from for very real reasons, are saying all sorts of weird things to discredit him, which is so taking Vatican sources on this should be taken with an enormous grain of salt. Hey, Anthony, I'm putting you in timeout. Don't do that. You put my channel at risk when you put that stuff in my chat. Again, don't do that. It does put my channel at risk when you do that. YouTube is cracking down on that stuff, severely cracking down. And you actually hurt me personally when you do that. So yeah, don't do that. But yes, that was Francis's statement. They'll be broadcast tonight in the United States. I'm sure we'll be talking about this in the days to come. Helen asks, so will good old Fernandez soon say the Eucharistic miracles are not to be believed? I mean, that's in the document. It's that he never says Eucharistic. Actually, he does mention Eucharistic miracles. And the document itself says that the Vatican, it will unless there's an extraordinary circumstance that the Pope chooses to take himself, the Vatican will not be saying things are worthy of belief. Full stop. I don't know why I'm the only one pointing out, by the way, that one of the criteria for denying apparitions and mystics is whether it sows division in the church, because that does just stop any future La Salette's Good Success, Akita, or Fatima messages from ever being approved by the Vatican. But that's explicitly in the document. And yes, Eucharistic miracles are there too. Eucharistic miracles are listed there because the Vatican will not say anything is of supernatural origin. Anything, not a single thing. No more worthy of belief. The closest I'll say is nothing here is a damage to the faith, but nothing in there will be worthy of belief. Makes you wonder about like the blood of St. Januarius. It happens once or twice a year where the blood in the reliquary goes from solid to liquid for no discernible scientific reason. That happens annually. I wonder what's going to happen with that. Jeff says the priest you speak of, his content is nothing but nasty. I ask him where the criticism of progressive liberals who are actually trying to change the church teaching. You won't find it. You won't find it. Bring back the pre-55 liturgy. You know what's funny is, for all the debate among traditionalists between the FSSP and the SSPX, the FSSP are the ones who have most of the pre-55 liturgy. Yes, there are SSPX priests who do it, but as an organization, officially, the SSPX don't. But many FSSP priests do. If you're looking for the pre-1955 liturgical liturgy, meaning the Holy Week liturgy, and some of the prayers at the end, you will find that mostly with the FSSP, and I'm assuming the Institute of Christ the King probably has some too. The Eucharistic Convention is being held just said nothing about Eucharist, just a guitar show. Yeah, no, I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. Because it is absolutely necessary for the bishops to do things to restore belief in the real presence. Absolutely necessary. And they're spending millions upon millions of dollars doing this, and they completely wasted their time. But we'll go over that more tomorrow as more stories emerge about it. Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest offers pre-55, says Anna. Okay, very good. I've never been to a mass with them. The nearest one for me is like 7-hour drive away. So when I've got the FSSP and the SSPX within an hour and a half and at 3 locations within an hour and a half from where I live, driving 7 hours for the mass is a bit much. All right, folks. Curious what you think about this. Look forward to it, Chesty. Let me lose a few pounds first. My efforts might finally be working. Prayers for that, please. I will ask for personal prayers that that I have the discipline to stick to what I've started doing this week to try to really get all this extra weight I gained after the tornado last year off and gone finally. And it might actually be working, but it's the most rigorous, disciplined thing I've ever had to do. But let me lose a few pounds before you try that. Since I know you live, I think in Ada or somewhere near there, so that's not that far. So, so prayers for that, please. It would be appreciated. Let me know if there's any final thoughts on all this in the comments. Do you understand my differentiation that I make between the and the one that I think Vigano is making between we'll call it ecclesiastical conservatism, being traditionally minded and traditional Catholic? I have a broader definition than most people, more inclusive, because I actually believe in uniting the clans. So, but let me know what your thoughts on all this in the comments, please. Kathleen says, try carnivore, no go. That's what I'm doing. But carnivore is not actually strictly a weight loss diet unless you do some other things with it. And it's the other things that are the hard time. But let me know what you thought of all this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So to sharing this on social media, that helps too. Pray for everybody we spoke about in today's live stream. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.